So we never really worried about it. The only time it got a little bit squirrely was when the Tet Offensive hit, and we were put on alert right away, and I didn't even know that we had rifles and so on there. But all of a sudden they said, called everybody together, and all of a sudden they were handing out rifles and ammunition and all kinds of stuff. And in those years when Vietnam was going on and so on, I never got harassed by anybody.
Good.
But there were times when I was fearful that I would. When I was out in California at that post, we did do a lot of training. Now, kind of during where the Watts riots and stuff were going on too, and we did a lot of training for riot control, crowd control,
oh, really?
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was really worried about that. I didn't know what that would be like.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was never sorry that I became a teacher, and I really enjoyed what I did, and I felt good about what I did. I always felt that I treated people fairly. I tried to anyway, and I know sometimes people didn't. Well, that's not fair. Well, that's the only solution I got for you right now.
Yeah.
And that's the way I want things to be. So.
Well, you were very well respected. I mean, as far as I knew, everybody I heard talking about you, they really liked you as a teacher.
Thank you.
And
the flag is still extremely important. And every funeral that I go to and so on, and I still almost get choked up with the volley, and everything. And taps gets me a lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
When my grandson and I got back from the flight, they drove us into the arena on the buses, and all the people that were in the stands and got off, and man, there were tears coming down my eyes, and it was great.
Hello, this is Jimbo from the YouTube channel Jimbo, South Dakota, and this is the Hog House Chronicles podcast. And today I have a special friend with me, known him for a long time. His name is Bob Vanderlinde, but I have a hard time saying Bob Vanderlinde, Mr. Vanderlinde to me. I'm almost 62 years old, and I feel weird every time I call you Bob, so I don't do it very often. But he was a teacher in my high school, and also one of my wrestling coaches. And so we go way back, and I didn't know it back then, but I know it now. Found out, I don't know, a year or two ago that you spent some time in the military as well.
Right.
So, yeah, let's go ahead and just start this off. You can tell us what you want about how you grew up, where you were raised, family, and then we'll slide into your military career.
Okay, sounds good. I was born in Sioux Falls in 1946. And we lived in Sioux Falls in various locations in Sioux Falls for a number of years. And in 1959, we moved out to Brandon, South Dakota. And I went to school there and graduated from Brandon Valley High School in 1964. From then, after I graduated, I decided to go into drafting. I wanted to be an architectural draftsman. And so I went to Wahpeton, North Dakota, the North Dakota State School of Science. And it was a 2-year program, and I got my associate's degree from there. And I got a job right away after I graduated with DeWild Grant Reckert and Associates in Rock Rapids, Iowa. They were architects and engineers, and it was a fantastic job. And that was I think it was in right about the 1st of June when I started. And before I knew it, I had a draft notice, and Uncle Sam decided that he wanted me more than what DeWitt Grant Record did. So I wanted to stay in drafting, so I decided to enlist so that I could stay in drafting. So I had to take an extra year with my enlistment then to make it a 3-year thing, and so that's what I did. And the military is kind of a strange place sometimes because I'd been to Wahpeton, North Dakota in architectural drafting, and I had an associate's degree, but they told me I couldn't be a draftsman in the Army because I hadn't taken geometry in high school.
Oh, wow.
So
After all that.
So I had, what I ended up having to do then is take a test, and everything that I'd planned on as far as being with the Army and staying as a draftsman depended on that test. So it put a lot of bad things on my mind for a while, what was going to happen if I didn't.
Well, and you said for a while, how long of time frame did you have between finding out you had to take that and actually taking it?
Well, it was a couple weeks.
Weeks worth? I thought you were going to say days.
No, it ended up being a couple weeks, but I figured, well, if I was able to get through the drafting course and everything, I should be okay. I didn't know any theorems or anything for geometry, but
Right.
but I went and took the test and did well on the test. So I guess it was kind of like getting a GED in geometry. And so I passed that and was able then to go into the military.
And that was pivotal on your path through getting drafted and where you were going to be sent.
Right. I was inducted then in Sioux Falls, and we got on a bus and headed out to the airport and got on a plane and went to Fort Bliss, Texas for basic training.
Was that your very first airplane ride?
Yes.
Mine too.
Yes, it was. And it was kind of a scary. I was 18, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never been. Well, we've been on vacations and stuff, but I'd never been by myself any place like that. And getting off, we got there at night, and it was real dark out. They got us off the buses from the airport and everything, and you're wondering what's going to happen next. And it's kind of you're kind of feeling kind of lost for a while, and they're yelling at you and everything. And
well, and that's something on its own. But then when you know the Vietnam War is going on, that adds more to it, I think.
Correct. That's why I wanted to stay in drafting.
Yep.
We started our basic training, and as we finally kind of got into a routine with it, the first few days are kind of you're not sure if you're human or what you are,
Mm-hmm.
and they're part of their breakdown process to change you into something else, what they want for you to be. And,
Break down your individuality.
Right, that's for sure. And you learn to do things as a group, and we kept on going. And I found out that I was really glad then that I enlisted after I found out where most of the ones that were drafted that didn't take an enlistment for any particular thing or whatever, they were headed for Georgia to get infantry training for Vietnam. That was their next place going. I was fortunate. I had a I wasn't married yet, but I was engaged, and I was in the process of trying to change from. I was raised as a Baptist, and so I was trying to change from a Baptist into a Lutheran because that's what my future wife was a Lutheran. So, and it so happened that the one of the chaplains down at Fort Bliss was an old minister from her church in Valley Springs, South Dakota.
Oh, wow.
And so, of course, he knew her real well and everything, and somehow word had got to him that I was there, and he came and visited me, and I told him, I said, well, I'd like to figure out some way that maybe I could go through a mini confirmation class so I could become a Lutheran then. So that worked out real good for me because that allowed me to go someplace on Sundays
Yes.
and get some biblical training for to be a Lutheran and so on. And it also worked out that my wife had relatives in El Paso, and I was able to get off on a weekend to go to their house with the chaplain. Got me off base and took me to their house, and I had a meal there at their house. And
wow.
That
had to
I had
break
never
it
met
up.
them before, so it was kind of nice that way too.
Yeah, that had to break it up quite a bit,
Oh,
compared to just straight up what basic training is usually
right.
like.
The other guys were pretty envious that I got to go off post.
Yeah.
So we got done with our 8 weeks of basic training, and my next step then was to get on a plane and head to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, for my AIT training in drafting, and that was pretty uneventful because I was pretty familiar. I'd just been through everything that they were teaching me there and everything, and but we had to get into the military way of doing things. That's a little different than the architects were, but it was basically everything was the same.
Mm-hmm.
And from after I graduated from AIT training, then I got a little bit of my next post was going to be in California. And so I got a couple of days of leave between the two that I got to go back home then. And my future wife was working at a bank in Sioux Falls, and she didn't know I was coming through. So I walked in the door and created a ruckus at the bank.
In uniform?
I was in uniform because you had to travel everything. You had always had to travel in uniform. And so I just pretty much gotten off the plane and went down to the bank.
That's pretty cool.
So that was really good. And I was there for a day or so, and then on the plane again and headed for Fort MacArthur, California, by San Diego. It's a little bit south of San Diego, and it was a small little post, and I was posted with the engineers. The post engineers is the office that I went into. It was all civilians in there and me, so that was pretty good duty.
Yeah, sounds like it.
It was a real small post. There was only about 2 companies of people that were there. It was an old-fashioned type of post. There was a lot of the Spanish influence in the buildings and so on that were there, and it really wasn't a very big post at all. And basically all that they did there was there was a lot of bodies coming back from Vietnam, and they did funerals and services and stuff, and that's about all that they did there. And let's see, I can't remember the dates on that right now. I've kind of lost that a little bit. It was spring when I got there, and a little bit more toward the summertime in June or whatever. There got to be so many funerals that they had to do that some of us that were in some other areas, we ended up having to go do funerals, and that was one of the things I was really glad that I didn't have to do all the time, because that's a tough one.
What was your part of the doing of the funerals?
Mainly it was carrying the casket. I never had to fold the flag or any of those things, but that's because we weren't really trained that much for that. We just kind of we got picked one day because we had to go. And so they kind of told us what we had to do on the fly, and so we did all right. But at least there were some guys that were along with us that really knew what to do.
Yeah, that can get to you.
Yeah, and I think that day that we went out, we did 2 funerals on that day. So you went to one place, and then you drove to the next one and did the next one. So I was glad to be done with that duty. And so then I was set to get married in August, first week in August, and the time came up to go home for that. And about that same time, I found out that I had orders for Vietnam. I don't know what happened, but I went home. We had our wedding. My wife and I got in my '59 Chevy with no air conditioning or anything, and drove back to California together. And sometime in between there, my orders got switched to Thailand. So then I was really happy
Yeah.
that I didn't have my original orders. And so I was going to an engineering unit in Thailand, and I was going to be headquarters and headquarters company. So I knew I wasn't going to be out in the field a lot, and so that worked out really well for me that way too. On the way out to California, my parents had given us a new set of tires for the car. That was our wedding present, and
Pretty practical.
yeah,
but
pretty practical.
nice.
It was really nice because the tires that were on there were really bad.
It's a long trip too.
And it was a 6-cylinder Chevy, and you couldn't really get much out of her. And we went through Las Vegas, and we got on our way across the desert a little bit. And next thing you know, we're pulling over because the car was heating up. And sat beside the edge of the road for a while. And I also had my arm hanging out the window because they had the windows down. And I would developed a boil right in the middle part of my back part of my arm.
Oh, wow.
And it was sunburned. And so that
Damaging government property.
Yeah, it was not a good trip back to California.
Well, and back then too, if you were going through maybe north a ways through mountainous areas, back then you'd have carburetor trouble.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
altitude. And that
Right.
was
Yeah,
something to battle.
There wasn't a lot of power to that car anyway to start with.
Right.
It would have been really bad if we'd had more mountains and stuff. We ended up getting back out there, and the civilians that I worked with, they were some older gentlemen and stuff, and they took us out. They took us out to eat, and they took us around and drove us up through L.A. and stuff, and where some of the movie stars lived and things like that. So because Barb and I had no money at that time. We were living in an apartment because there wasn't any married housing on the fort at all because it was too small. So we had an apartment in a big apartment complex, and our rent was $125 a month, and I was making $75 a month. So luckily she had put some money away and everything, and we kind of lived on that. And the big thrill, I guess, when we were out there then was we couldn't do anything because it didn't have any money unless somebody was taking us or whatever. And we got a belated wedding present card in the mail, and I think there was a $10 bill in there, and we could get really discounted tickets for Disneyland. So that was our honeymoon trip was to Disneyland.
There you go.
And so that was in August, and by the end of August, we were on our way back to South Dakota for my 30-day leave before heading over to Thailand. When I went back then to Oakland and everything, and got ready to get on the plane, I ran into a high school classmate of mine, and he was a forward observer in the Army. He was going back for his second tour. He volunteered to go back as a forward observer for a second time.
Wow.
And
did he tell you what brought him to that decision? You probably didn't have a long time to talk.
He didn't really say that much, but he said he enjoyed what he was doing, and so I thought, well,
Wow.
to each his own.
Yeah.
But he made it back from that one too. So he had two times over there, and was very fortunate to make it back and stuff.
Right. Man, well, good on him.
Yep.
That's amazing.
So on the plane and that 18-hour flight, we went. I can't remember. We stopped in Hawaii for fuel, got off the plane just to stretch our legs and right back on. And then we stopped in the Philippines, and we stopped in Okinawa, and we stopped in Saigon, and then that's where most of them got off of the plane there. And then there was a few of us that went on to Bangkok, got off, and we spent the night in Bangkok then, and the next day then we got on some deuce and a halves and with our gear and everything, and took a little ride up the road to Korat, Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
There was a fairly good sized Air Force base in Korat at that time, and I can't think of the name of it now. I don't know if I even knew the name of it. We were just north of that. Had a small little camp that was actually headquarters company of 44th Engineering Group, and then there was a pipeline company that was there with us, pipeline engineers.
So there probably wasn't much for joint bases back then.
No, that was kind of the camp was called Camp Usertai, and it was a small little camp. Like I said, there was 2 companies basically. That was what was there, and we had a lot of people coming and going all the time because it was headquarters company.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at the time in Thailand where the engineers were a big part of that. We were constructing a big road from on the Gulf. Satahip was the port. It was a deep water port at Satahip, and we were building support structures and stuff there for warehouses, and of course there were going to be a lot of people stationed there and so on too for running everything, and so they had to build barracks, and they had NCO clubs and officers clubs that were being built, and we drew all the plans from those up in Korat. And then the construction companies, the Army construction companies, were along the way building the roads between Korat and down there.
I was going to ask you if it was Army doing the constructing or if it was multi-force, if maybe the Seabees had to do some of that stuff.
I think it was mostly just the Army. Yeah. I don't remember seeing when I had to take a trip down there once down to check on how construction and so on was going. That was later on, and after I'd been there for quite a while.
Right.
When I was there, I was just an E2, private E2.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I'd gotten my PFC. I was a PFC by then, when I finally got over there. Yeah.
But most of your projects were fairly close to the base you were at, or did you
no,
design
there was
projects in
about
Vietnam
it was
too?
about trying to remember. I drove in a Jeep down there to that port. It was south of Korat. Seems like 3-4 hours north up to Korat from Satahip, and the roads were. It was getting better as the time went on. When we went from Bangkok to Korat, that was a couple-hour drive too.
Did you have any apprehension when you're out in the country driving around or anything?
No,
because
because
it was Thailand, it wasn't Vietnam,
right.
But still,
we never worried about it too much because the Thai Army was a very, very good army. They were some mean motor scooters. They weren't very big and stuff, but they were good fighters.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of under the protection, I think, of them more than anything.
Right. Well, that's good.
Yeah, and then and as you went along the road, you would see camps and so on every once in a while where the Thai Army was based and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when between the Air Force Base and where our little camp was up at Korat, there was we had both Thai Air Force there and Thai Army there, and for protection and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So we never really worried about it. The only time it got a little bit squirrely was when the Tet Offensive hit, and we were put on alert right away, and I didn't even know that we had rifles and so on there. But all of a sudden they said, called everybody together, and all of a sudden they were handing out rifles and ammunition and all kinds of stuff. And they sent us out, and we had bunkers kind of around the base and so on, but there was barbed wire, concertina wire and stuff around there a little bit, but there wasn't a lot of protection there. We were getting a little worried at that time, but it really only lasted for us for a while, and they realized that they were just hitting certain places in Vietnam then and weren't coming across.
Mm-hmm.
We had kind of it was a nice little base because we weren't real stressed on protocol, Army protocol, and so on. It was pretty relaxed, and we had a nice office with big drawing tables and stuff in it, and we had a master sergeant that was in charge of us, and plus a lieutenant and a captain that were the engineers and told us what we were supposed to draw. And when I first went in there were I think there were 7 of us draftsmen.
That was going to be my next question. How many on your level?
It was we had a pretty good crew. Plus, we had 2 Thai civilians that were draftsmen, and they were invaluable to us because when the town of Karat was just down the road, mile and a half or something like that, and so we were free to go into Karat anytime at night that we wanted to go, and there was a lot of things to do in the town of Karat at night for American GIs. They wanted the American dollar real bad.
So it wasn't Vietnam, but it was Thailand. So generally Vietnam was a 1-year tour. Did you have a 1-year tour also?
Yes, it was a 1-year tour.
So it wasn't lengthened to keep your skills there longer.
No. In fact, it wasn't. I think it was about 6 months after I got there. About half of our office, they'd all come about the same time. They all rotated back to the States, and then we had a few new people come in and so on, and they were all Spec 5s that went back, and so there was. I think I had my Spec 4 by then, and as soon as they rotated back, somebody had to kind of take charge, and so I kind of took charge because I was the oldest one there, other than the master sergeant and stuff,
Right.
And I knew that we had to have some direction or something with all these new guys coming in, and so it worked out good for me because then I was awarded an Army Commendation Medal at that time because for taking over, to have an initiative to take over and so on, and then I got my Spec 5 real soon after that too. So. So it was beneficial that way to me and helped with the money going back home and stuff a little bit.
Right. Yeah, money was hard to come by.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. We had a mess hall, and that was a good mess hall. As far as Army food went, it was pretty good. That was back when all of the chefs and so on were all Army too, and not civilians.
Right.
Yeah, we got the same treatment basically as Vietnam as far as we were considered war zone, and so we got hazardous duty pay and all of those kind of things, and it was a year term, and except we didn't get an R&R because we really didn't need an R&R. We had R&R every day.
Right. Yeah.
They were pretty good on the post as far as we played volleyball, and they had a volleyball league and so on, and we had a pretty good volleyball team, and we got to go on a TDY to another Air Force base up in northern Thailand a little further.
So would some of your Thai workmates travel with you and stuff, or was it just groups of Army guys doing the stuff you're talking about?
When we went to a lot of historical places and so on. The 2 Thais that were in our office, they knew where all these places were located, with the big reclining Buddhas and the things that you see a lot of times when they talk about Laos and stuff. In Cambodia, they show these temples and so on out in the middle of things. And there were a lot of those in Thailand also.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some beautiful places we went to see in ruins and things like that. And they knew where they all were. And the mess hall would get us a big cooler, and they would make sandwiches and stuff for us to take along and everything. And there was another cooler to go along too, with the refreshments in it.
Sure.
And they would take us and show us where all these places were and so on. And we'd take a deuce and a half and go out. So I saw a lot of really beautiful country and so on.
I was going to ask you what
Pretty
countries you had been to, other countries while you were over there, or did you stay within
We stayed
Thailand borders?
within Thailand. Yeah, we
Okay.
didn't go into Cambodia or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
because there was more things going on over there
Sure.
than
Yeah,
their army. I don't think was as good as the Thai army
Yeah.
was.
plenty to see in Thailand.
Yeah, yep. So it was good for that. In fact, I've got about 300 slides that I don't have a projector anymore, so I can't show them to anybody anymore. And I what I need to do is get those sent off to someplace so that I can.
Yeah, because there's places that'll do that.
Yeah.
I don't think you would regret doing that.
I know, and I kind of regret, because I lost a grandson. It's been 2 years going on the third year now. Passed
Mhm.
away, and he went on Midwest Honor Flight with me, and he never got to see those slides because our projector had broke and so on before that time, and I kind of regret that. But I took a lot of pictures. Like I said, I think I got about 500 pictures of slides and stuff of all those places we went and saw and so on.
Mhm.
And I'd
Yeah.
like to see them again myself.
Yeah, it's cool your grandson got to go on that honor flight
Yep.
with you. How long ago was that then that you did the honor flight?
1922, August of 1922. 2022, not 1922.
Yeah, it wasn't even registering with me. I'm just like, yeah, 22.
All of a sudden it just, that's not right. Yeah, that was a great trip.
Mhm.
So got back home, and my next station then when I got back home was in 1st Army Headquarters at Fort Meade, Maryland. And we lived right on U.S. Highway 1 between, right by the town of Laurel, Maryland, but Highway 1 runs from Baltimore to D.C.
Making more than $75 a month by then?
Not a lot more.
Not a lot more.
I can't even remember all I remember is that $75 a month that I was making when I first went in. And
Or maybe at least making enough to cover your rent
well, yeah,
with one income.
right. Well, my wife worked. She got a job out there at the University of Maryland, and she rode with. She didn't drive even at that time, and so she got this job. She looked on the bulletin board and found somebody that would provide her with a ride from Laurel to
Mhm.
what's it, Springs? Oh, I can't think of the name of the town now, where the University of Maryland is. Anyway, she'd get up in the morning and go out and get in. And he would pull in and pick her up and take her over to the university. She worked for the chemistry department, so she learned a lot of chemistry stuff by typing in. One of the professors she was working for was writing a book, so she said that was good training for her.
Right.
So, and I went into an engineering unit at Fort Meade, and that's where I lost my will to be a draftsman anymore.
Oh, really?
It was when I was in Thailand, I was drawing plans for things, buildings and things I wanted. That was really great. When I got back, I was drawing, making charts and graphs for generals for briefings.
Oh, geez.
And that is the most boring thing in the world. And I couldn't even sit at a drafting table anymore. So there was a program going on right then. If you could get up to a 3-month early out if you're going back to school. So all of a sudden I said, I'm going back to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I applied to Springfield, Southern State Teachers College in Springfield.
Yeah, one of the 4 or 5 names that school had.
Yep.
Because that was part of the last graduating class out of there in '84.
In 84.
USD Springfield.
Yeah, in fact, I graduated from USD Springfield
you?
in 72. Yeah, 72.
Yep. So 12 years later, I was graduating out of there, and they were being turned into a prison.
Yep, I know. That's what I say. I just tell everybody I went to Penn State school. So, so I got out then in. I was due to get out in September, and I got out toward the end of August.
Mm-hmm.
Just so I got a chance to get home.
Right.
My
Not 3 months early, but early enough to start.
Right, but early enough that I got out, and then I got started in school, and my folks had gone down there and rented a place for us that I didn't. My wife still is wondering how we survived that first
house. Still
house.
might be there. It's probably full of bats.
I don't think it's there anymore. I really don't.
Probably
Because the second place we moved to in Springfield, that house is not there anymore either.
Right.
That wasn't that much better, but a lot better than the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to school, and I decided to get into biology because I always liked biology in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And my advisor was one of the biology professors then. And he said, well, what are you going to do with your biology degree? And I said, I have no idea. He says, well, have you ever thought of going into education? And I said, no, but that sounds good to me, because I couldn't stand to sit at a drawing board anymore. So I started that, and of course you had to take chemistry then when you were a freshman. So I took chemistry, and I got done with that, and I said, okay, I'm really glad now that I don't have any more chemistry to teach. And he said, if you're going to be a biology teacher, you really should take organic chemistry. That's next. I said,
he's not throwing it all at you at once. You finish something and then tease it on you.
I said, well, that's probably right, because there's a lot of organic chemistry in biology. So that's what I did. I took more organic chemistry. And the next year says, I'm done with chemistry now. And he said, do you realize that you're 4 hours away from a minor in chemistry? And I said, really? He said, really? He said, I said, well, I don't want to ever teach chemistry because I don't know it that well. And he said, well, take it. It'll help you get a job. So I said, okay. He could always talk me into good stuff real easy. And so I did, and got my minor in chemistry. And that was in, let's see, 69, 71, 72. Yeah, 72. And I went right straight. I got my degree in 3 years. I went right straight through. I went summers and whatever I could do to get out of there because I needed to get a job.
Right.
My wife was lucky; she got a job in the bank at Springfield, and she's the one that provided all the cash for us. Because the GI Bill was great,
right,
and paid for pretty much everything. I didn't really have to borrow any money at all to speak of. And so I sent out 50 job applications, and I heard back from one place. And I thought, oh, boy, this is going to be bad. Of course, in those years, guys were either going to college, and there was a lot of teachers being put out then because they did not want to go to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And so there wasn't that many jobs out there. And so I got the interview, and I said, it's a lot of pressure now. I've only got one back, and I got the job. So I went to Esteline, South Dakota, and that's where I began my teaching career. And I was there for 6 years, taught biology, chemistry, physical science, and learned an awful lot of chemistry in the first 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, because, they say you learn the most about whatever subject when you are teaching.
Right.
Because it just happens that way because
Or you have to.
prepare
You have to.
for any question that can come. So you're naturally learning more. And
Yep.
yeah, tough deal though.
Yeah, it
kinda
was
scary.
a lot of pressure because
Mhm.
and I really didn't. Oh yeah, I did have to coach then. I was coaching fifth grade boys basketball,
Mhm.
and so that wasn't a lot of pressure there and stuff. I think I got $100 for doing that.
Yep.
And then when girls basketball came into South Dakota, I that'd have been right before I moved. So it's been 76, 77, somewhere in that range anyway. And we had a girls basketball team, and I was assistant coach on that, so I coached the B team. And there wasn't really much difference between coaching the girls B team than there was the fifth grade boys basketball. I mean,
Oh yeah.
as far as knowledge and what they could do
Well,
and
it was
everything,
just getting started.
it was
too,
just
like you
getting
said,
started.
so,
Yeah, so it was tough.
Yeah.
And then I got to be assistant girls track coach also at about that same time, and so that was good. And I decided that we were going to leave Esteline. I found there was a position open in Elk Point, and the pay was way better than what I was getting in Esteline. So I applied for the job and got the job there, and that's where I finished my teaching career pretty much in Elk Point. Well, and then it became Elk Point Jefferson in
Mhm.
when was it?
Boy, I don't remember. I graduated in '82.
Yeah, so I
and
think
it
it was
a
90.
ways after that.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was 95, 94 or 95.
That
somewhere
sounds
in
about
there.
right.
And when I went there, I said, I don't want to coach anymore. I want to concentrate on just my teaching and so on.
And what year was that again? You said Elk
78,
Point?
1978.
Okay.
Yep. And so I told them I didn't want to coach anything, and they said okay. And then it wasn't a couple weeks after I signed my contract for that fall, they said, well, we really need a freshman football coach. I said, okay, I guess I'll do
After
that.
they got you on board.
Yeah,
You know.
small schools, you get those duties as assigned, and so I did that, and I kind of stayed there for a while, and then the wrestling coach asked me if I was interested in keeping score for wrestling, and I said, well, I've never wrestled, I don't know. I watched it and I enjoyed watching it, and so he says, nothing to it. So I started keeping score at the wrestling matches and so on.
And that was Mr. Nelson.
That was Nelson, yep, Glenn Nelson, and so we started out that way. And I was trying to remember what year after that I did become the assistant coach. He asked me if I wanted to. He said, I need an assistant coach. He said, I'm all by myself here. And I said, Glenn, I don't know that much about wrestling. I know how to keep score and stuff. He said, that doesn't matter. He said, I like the way you work with the kids and so on. And he said, we'll learn together.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if you were doing that when I was a freshman or maybe when I was a sophomore. So I don't know, maybe 79, 80-ish.
It must have been somewhere around that time.
Mhm.
Yep. It was before I became girls track coach, and that wasn't much after that time either.
Right.
All of a sudden, somebody that didn't want to coach, and now I'm still freshman football coach, and then I'm assistant wrestling coach. And my dad died about in that time too, after we started that and so on, and so there's more pressure on things, and so then things are going along pretty good. And then I said, well, I always really liked girls track, and the job became available in Elk Point, and the guy that was going to do it, Mark Melhoff was his name. He was hired then to be the girls' track coach. Well, from the time he got signed his contract and stuff, he ended up passing away.
I remember that.
And I'd signed up to be his assistant. Our rooms are right by each other down in the old school building and so on. And in fact, I had stayed at his house a couple of times when I first went to Elk Point. My wife was still up in Esteline because we hadn't sold our house up there yet. And so she was still up there, and I was kind of going between a camper that I'd borrowed from my brother-in-law, and I stayed with a couple of the other teachers in their basements a couple of nights and so on.
Do what you got to do.
So it was, we finally got the house sold and everything, and then we got everybody to Elk Point then. And so it was kind of hectic there for a little beginning of my teaching career in Elk Point. And in fact, the superintendent that hired me left during the summer after he'd hired me. And so I had started off with a new superintendent and everything that I didn't really know.
Mm-hmm.
So things were a little hectic back at that time. But so we got going, and like I said, eventually I was coaching football, assistant football coach, assistant wrestling coach, and I was then head girls track coach because the other one had passed away. That it was supposed to be that, and
then Rod Knutson was the
men's
track coach.
Was the boys track coach.
Who
Yeah.
he also went to USD Springfield.
He also went. He
had
graduated a year
the
before I did.
60-yard indoor record. And I just we had an all-class reunion down there last summer.
Yeah.
And in the museum downtown, they've got that board down in the basement.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure it had to have been yards back then, I would think.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
60-yard, I didn't realize I knew he had a record. I didn't know it was an indoor record till last summer.
He was a really good long jumper too in high school.
Yep, no doubt.
And then down at Springfield, they won a relay at the national championships. I want to say the 4x1 relay.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the national championships and stuff. So at that time, Springfield was putting out a lot of teachers, and their athletics wasn't too bad. They had a good wrestling team for a while, and they had some fair basketball teams. And
well, when I left your wrestling team, went to Springfield. Right when they cut the program, I was going to try it. You know better than anybody. I wasn't worth a dang on my feet, and stuff. But a lot of college wrestling's on your feet.
Yep, that's right.
I never got the chance to try. But
that's too bad because let's see, who's the forgot his name. Now there was a wrestling coach down there, and then he passed away too.
Oh, down at Springfield.
Yeah, or they cut the program. Yeah. That's what it was.
Yeah. Yep.
And then he became a guard at the
prison.
Yeah.
Well, like a lot of them did down there. I mean, there's not a lot of jobs in a town of 800 where the college had 800 students for the year.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I never did know him. I got there the fall of '82, so
right.
It was already gone. So.
Yeah, it was a good school. It was really a good school. I really enjoyed my time there and everything, and I felt well prepared to go out and teach from there too and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right. Yeah. So then you said you finished your career at Elk Point there for teaching. So you must have stayed there for quite a while then.
25 years.
25 years total. Yeah.
So I retired out of the classroom in 2003. Dolores Rosenbaum and Bonadelle Castrop were two of them that retired at the same time I did in 2003. And so then I was trying to decide, okay, what am I going to do now?
Well, you didn't have time for hobbies or anything.
No, so I needed to find a job to do something anyway. And so one of my teachers that I knew from workshops and so on used to be the wrestling coach in Mitchell, Jerry Opbrook, and he was a great biology teacher. And the state had a program right about then called Science on the Move. And it was the state had built two 53-foot semi-trailers into mobile science labs.
Mm-hmm.
And there was two of them, and they needed another driver. He was in charge of the program. They needed another driver. So I put in for it and everything, and interviewed, and was lucky enough to get the job. The only problem was I got the job in August, and school starts in September,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have a CDL. I'd never driven a semi before. I needed to learn how to do everything in the trailer because it was 12 computer stations in there and a self-contained lab, so that it was run by a generator. You had a generator on the back of the truck that
Happy
ran all
retirement.
everything. Yeah, and so I went to Mitchell, and Jerry during the day taught me how to do everything inside the truck that needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the evenings, they hired a guy from Mitchell Votech that taught semi-driving, and he came over to, we were at the DOT yard in Mitchell, and we just started driving around inside of the yard, started going through, how to back up and
Sure.
all this stuff, and I was always so worried about the truck because the trucks cost about $1 million a piece with all the equipment they had in them and stuff.
Right.
And that put a lot of pressure on me trying to learn how to drive that. I drove around in a lot of circles for a long time and learning how to shift and everything. And then finally one day we went out on the road and got on the interstate and went down the interstate a little ways and came back. And so, and then I had to go take my test. And I was really worried about that. I was really worried about the pre-inspection type stuff, because when you take that test, you got to get all of that pre-inspection stuff
Mm-hmm.
right. And
Right.
I barely knew how to start the thing, but I listened well, and I passed my test on the first go around, and so got my my CDL. And Jerry told me, he says, "Well, I want you on the road by the 15th of September."
Is this all within the state of South Dakota that you're
Within
going to
the
be doing
state of
now?
South Dakota, right? And he says, "We'll kind of break the state up." He says, "I'll kind of take the." I went out with him for a few right at the beginning,
Sure.
and so we kind of ran the thing together and saw how he did things and so on. He says, "You don't have to do things like I do things, but this is kind of what works for me."
Mm-hmm.
And so, and he was a great teacher. So I thought, yeah, we're going to do things that way. So I got out on the road, and I had the hardest part of that whole job was making up the schedule, because we got our teachers into a workshop in the summer, and that first year he kind of had the schedule already made up. And so the next year we had a workshop in the summer, and we had another whole big group of teachers come in, and we did some scheduling then, and I learned how to schedule and how to do everything like that. And they got the truck to go to their school. They didn't have to pay anything for it to come to the school or anything. All they had to do was furnish us with a vehicle so that we could get back home, and we'd put down for either 2 or 3 days of teaching at the school that
I was
you're
going to
at.
ask you if that semi had a sleeper on it. I mean,
No.
you weren't forced to do that. were
No. No, they had to furnish us with a vehicle. That was one of the things. And a lot of them, some of those real small schools didn't have a vehicle.
you? Right.
And so what they could do is they could use the state motor pool if they had, close to them. Some of them had to drive quite a ways to get a car, so
Mhm.
then they rent them from the state so that we had a vehicle to use.
Yeah. And a lot of small schools in
Yeah.
the state.
And I never felt so fortunate in my life that I taught at the schools I taught at, because both of them were not afraid to spend a little bit of money for equipment and stuff. And
Sure.
I had good equipment at both schools, even Esteline, which wasn't very big. I had good equipment there and stuff.
Mhm.
And Elk Point did too. So
Had you heard of a program called Starbase?
yes,
Okay.
in fact, I think went to a workshop on Starbase.
Yeah, some of the teachers, I was really good friends with them, and when they would do the class, they were based on the Air Guard base and also the Army base on the north end. I think their main office was on the Army base there. But yeah, they would have a scheduled where our shop, the flight equipment shop, will come in and do a class with the kids and show all the stuff that we do, what the
Right.
fighter pilots wore, but they were their premise, and it started out with underprivileged children, and I think it expanded, but trying to get them interested in math and science was their main premise.
I think maybe it was did they go to State Fair once in a while?
We didn't travel with them.
Okay.
We would just, when they had their they had their classes on the bases, but then as the side deal, they had the traveling
Okay.
deal. So
It
they
seems
were
to me
linked.
I went to a traveling thing or something. I'm pretty sure maybe it was at the State Fair because I was at the State Fair 2 or 3 years with the semi truck and stuff. So
Yeah, and I don't remember if they had a semi truck or a huge bus, but it was big, what they had. So, yeah, that was a good program too. But that's definitely what I thought of when you said you were doing that kind of work.
yeah, well, it was a great program. We went to the last year that we did it. We went to 120 some schools.
Wow.
That last year in a year's time. So we saw a lot of students. We did a lot of traveling and.
Year meaning 9 months school
Yeah,
year.
right.
Yeah.
Because in the summer we had workshops for the teachers.
Mhm.
That's how they got it to get to their school, and we did elementary through high school. So, in fact, we even had kindergarten kids on there and stuff. They would we'd set it up as kind of a demo thing and let them come in and play with some of the stuff, the equipment things that we had on there, and then they always loved that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we did DNA fingerprinting and with actual bacteria. It was actually bacteria, but we used it to solve a crime. They had a whole unit on a crime thing, and they used DNA to help solve that crime and
That's
stuff.
cool. Made it real interesting for
Yeah,
them.
it was. They'd get on there and they'd have to be on there for 2 hours or better, I think, to get through that whole unit on that. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah, and
Because you know how many kids you've heard say, "When am I ever going to use this?"
yeah,
you know?
right. Well, and most of those small schools, the equipment that we brought in there was stuff that they wouldn't have been exposed to even,
Right.
because it's kind of expendy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a great part of it. And I did that for 6 years then. So then I retired in 2009. And then I decided I'd had enough.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked a couple more years to get a little bit later into when I started my Social Security and stuff, but I was tired by then.
Yeah,
those
that's a lot.
Those last 6 years were really tiring because I'd get home. I'd be gone all week, and I'd get home on a Friday night, sometimes Saturday morning, and wash clothes and go to church, and I was back on the road by Sunday afternoon, depending on how far I had to drive,
Mm-hmm.
And then I got stuck on the northern section of the state once for quite a while, all the way out to Lemon and stuff. And that's a long ways from Lemon, especially when you get done with a class at what time was it? I got done and packed up by about 5:30,
Mm-hmm.
and I drove to Elk Point that night because I hadn't been home for 15 days.
Oh man!
I
And you're already
I
tired.
should have probably waited until the next morning to take off, but I haven't been home. I need to get home.
I could see why you'd push that for sure.
I don't like Mountain Dew, but I drink a lot of Mountain Dew, and it works.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, so I'm just looking at a couple little notes here. As far as, and this goes for military time, teacher time, whatever, when did you feel the most adrenaline pulsing through your body during your working career?
Oh, probably after I'd retired from the classroom and I went to the state wrestling tournament the year that Elk Point won the state wrestling tournament.
Mm,
I really, Dan Swadek was coach then, along with Rob Lewis, and I'd never been so excited in my life. I wasn't there anymore, but I'd been a part of it for 20 years, and then never thought we'd ever see anything like that, and it that really got to me. And I got a little excited then that night of the Tit Offensive when we got put on alert too.
yeah, I kind of wonder.
I say, man, I thought I was going to be safe over here. We were, but you don't. It's the unknown, and it was dark when when they started passing out ammo and stuff, and so because we didn't really we had no flak vests or anything. We had our helmets and
Right.
They didn't even pass out any bayonets.
Oh, jeez. Ooh, yeah.
And they were pretty
That's
worried
close.
because they were not real careful. We found the next time when we started turning stuff back in, when we realized we didn't really need this stuff, we found ammo laying around out on the ground and stuff, because we didn't have any equipment really to what we needed to be a
Right.
fighting unit.
Mm-hmm.
That had been just tried to be self-preservation, I suppose.
Yeah. When you're talking about the wrestling portion of it, it reminded me of Kendall Seamers, the adrenaline going through your body. And he was just there watching. We were at an Elk Point tournament, and they had one of the sets of bleachers pushed in, and then we had the warm-up match right there.
Yep.
Well, Kendall was sitting way up at the top, not the top row, but one or two down, right on the edge. And, better than anybody, if you watch the crowd when there's a wrestling match going on and there's people that are twisting and turning,
right?
He fell right off of that onto the practice mat. He was way up there, and he jumped up and looked around to see if anybody. He walked right back up there, and
Yeah.
that was crazy.
There gets that. I probably had more adrenaline pumping during wrestling tournaments and so on, than like when Andy Curry won the state championship that year, and that was
Yeah.
great time.
Yep. Yeah. Got a deal here of some of your best days and situations. I bet you that probably counts as one of those.
Oh yeah, yeah. I always enjoyed the girls' track and stuff too, and that was one thing the girls always told me. They always say, "We know exactly where you're at," because they could hear me.
Oh.
I had a loud voice, and I wasn't afraid to use it.
Yeah, you were talking about that before we started on this, and I have pulled the slider down just a little bit here and there, but yeah, no, it's nice being able to be heard.
Yeah,
like especially out on the track.
right.
I mean, you're trying to get people down on the infield,
and I couldn't run ever. That's why I was such a terrible athlete when I was in high school and so on. I was blessed with no speed, and I liked all sports and everything, but I just had no athletic ability at all. I wasn't a bad baseball player, so but other than that,
yeah.
But I was slow.
On the military side, what made you the most proud about wearing a uniform?
Oh, it's gotten more pride later than what I had at the time.
Yep.
There was in those years when Vietnam was going on and so on. I never got harassed by anybody.
Good.
But there were times when I was fearful that I would, and I didn't. We had to always wear, in order to fly standby on the planes and so on, when you're traveling, you had to wear your uniform. There were times I wished sometimes that I didn't have my uniform on because I
Right.
was worried about those kind of things. My pride has really increased now since I've got out, and the Midwest Honor Flight did a lot for me mentally and
Hmm.
help with my getting over things, I guess, so to speak,
Right.
from those times. Um, when I was out in California at that post, we did do a lot of training. Now, kind of during where the Watts riots and stuff were going on too, and we did a lot of training for um, riot control, crowd control,
Oh,
and
really?
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was really worried about that. I didn't know what that would be like to be out standing on the front lines of one of those things and having people come up and spit at you and
Hmm.
call you names and things like that.
Right.
And that really worried me. And then we had a parade through downtown LA one day, and that was kind of worrisome too. What it was, how we were going to be received in the
Hmm.
parade and so on. And that's since that got over, I felt a lot better about things when we finally got out of Vietnam and things, and still not feeling real great because nobody ever said thank you,
Exactly.
you know, and but the Midwest Honor Flight was the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me.
Hmm.
I felt like I did something that was worthwhile, and felt like if we had accomplished something.
Yes. Yeah. They have at the DAV in Sioux Falls. I didn't realize till last year that there's like a designated day, like Vietnam Day. It's like 29 March. Last year it just happened to fall on Good Friday because Easter was so early.
Mm.
But this year they're doing their deal on Friday, the 28th of March, down at the DAV. And I'm going to go down there for the second time. And that Vietnam book that I showed you over there,
Yep.
I met some of the people that are in there, and it was pretty cool. And one thing I will say is they have the ceremony as well, and they have POWMIA flags, 7 of them, because there are still 7
Still
South
7, South
Dakotans
Dakota.
that have not been recovered.
Mm.
And so they have those 7 out there as part of their ceremonies, and they'll read about each person and that. And there's one thing I regret that I didn't volunteer for. My career field could have, but it was JTF-FA, Joint Task Force Full Accounting. And they were taking teams over to Vietnam, Laos, whatever countries were around there where there were some suspected remains, and they would open up cases. And you would go there with a team, and
Uh-huh.
each person had their job. And they have recovered some people's remains
Oh,
and
cool.
brought back. So I'm going to continue to go to that at the DAV in Sioux Falls. I was also invited to the one at Lennox after that because it started later. But it would be really cool to be standing there and have one of those flags folded up and put away.
Right.
That would be
Right.
really cool.
Yep. Yeah. The Midwest Honor Flight, they do such a great job. The people that are involved with that, it's just you feel so like they've got their arms around you,
Mm-hmm.
and enveloping you into love and so on. And it's really, really, really a great program. I I think I had to wait 2 years or almost 3 years before I got to go, before
Right.
they finally came to my name. Then I just got a newsletter from them yesterday, and there's 3 coming up this spring. One's going out of out of Sioux City, and the other 2 are out of Sioux Falls. And it's always when when my grandson and I got back from the flight, they drove us into the arena on
Yep.
the buses, and all the people that were in the stands and got off, and man, there were tears coming down my eyes, and
Absolutely.
it was great.
And part of this Vietnam Vet Day that I saw, um, they are huge on making sure that every Vietnam vet gets their hand shook, thanked for their service, and says, "Welcome home." And that means so much
Yep.
to all those guys. They can't hear it enough,
Yep.
kind of deal. So, and one thing I was going to ask you too, with being a coach, you heard that national anthem probably more than most people
Oh, yeah.
on that. So did any of the, and when I say pride, I mean pride in a good way.
Yeah.
Did you appreciate that more as time went on? Or, I mean, I can understand how when you hear something so often that it kind of drifts off a little bit, or how did your emotions go through all those years of coaching? And you're also part of it, of some of the military organizations. So when did that happen, and how did that all fold together?
It's something that I still always take pride in when they play that, and I always listen for it, and my eyes sometimes start wandering around, and I'm, okay, get that hat off over there,
Exactly.
I really feel like somebody's doing the flag a disservice if they've got their hat on or something, or I do that when I'm watching on TV when they're panning through the crowds and so on. People, disrespecting. Some people just don't know any better,
Right.
because they've never. I think sometimes we don't do a good enough job of flag etiquette and so on. It used to be the Legions used to go out to the schools a lot and so on, and they don't do that quite as much anymore as what they used to do and so on.
Right.
So, yeah, the flag is still extremely important, and every funeral that I go to and so on, and I still almost get choked up with the volley, and everything. And taps gets me a lot.
Oh, I'm
So,
sure. Yep. You attended a lot of funerals for those guys.
Yep.
And speaking of the flag, and when you were coaching me, because I was 18 when I was a senior, got a flag right up there in the rafters there. I'm going to get a light on it here. Had that thing since I was 18 years old, and you was coaching me back in that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wish I had known about having flags flown in fighter jets over different countries. I had no idea about that until like halfway through my Air Force career.
Oh, yeah.
But that one would have been a cool one to have folded up that whole
Yep.
time. And you remember the old gym
Yep.
in the high school there, that big flag that was there?
Right.
My natural dad died 6 months before I was born. He did 2 years in the Army. That was the flag from his casket.
Oh,
Was my
okay.
dad's. And I didn't realize that early on. And then my mom told me. But when they took the building down, the school kept record of it because they contacted us, and we got that flag back.
All right.
Yeah, my brother's got it right now in Sioux Center, Iowa, over there. Or
We
Orange
always
City.
had a big reunion up at up by Chester and so on. And my mom was an Ingalls, so I'm related to Laura Ingalls Wilder and stuff,
Really?
and
That's cool.
my grandpa fought in World War I, and he got gassed in the Ardennes Forest and stuff over there, and his casket flag every 4th of July, we'd have a family reunion on the 4th of July, and that flag flew every 4th of July.
Nice. Very cool.
During that time. So, yeah.
So what military organizations are you in now?
I'm a member of the Legion right now.
In Sioux Falls?
In Brandon.
Brandon.
Yep. So I kind of just got a little bit more into it than what I ever did before. My father-in-law was in the Navy in World War II, and his brother was in the Army Air Force during World War II, and got shot down in a plane and disfigured his face and everything, but he survived and everything. And they were both big in the Legion, and when he was always on me to join the Legion when I came back and stuff, and I said, no, that's not for me. I just didn't want anything to do with it and so on. And
very common back then.
And during that time, I know I'd heard from guys that they'd tried to get into Legion and stuff, and that they could get in, but the guys never treated them very well because that wasn't a war. That's what they were
It's a
told. That wasn't a
conflict
war. It was
or
a
a
conflict.
police
Yeah,
action.
whatever. Well, Korea really wasn't a war either.
Right.
The same thing.
Mhm.
But they seemed to accept them because I think a lot of them from World War II also fought in the Korean War.
Right.
So, but so I never really. I suppose I've been a member now. Must be getting close to 20 years, maybe.
Hmm.
And of course, Elk Point didn't really have a real active Legion for a long time and stuff. And VFW was probably a little bit more active. And I never tried to join VFW. I qualified for both, but I just, I was too busy back then, I think, with coaching and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
no
going
doubt.
a lot. So my wife didn't really want me to be well, she wanted me to be in the Legion because her dad wanted me to be in there. So
Yeah, because I didn't ask you earlier what other family members you had that
yeah,
served.
we both sides of the family had a lot of people. My grandpa Ingalls, he was in World War One, and he had 3 sons that were in Korea, and then one was in the National Guard, and I can't remember when he. So they had 4 sons that were involved in the military that way, and then grandsons and stuff. I had 2 cousins that both went Vietnam too,
Mhm.
and and then on my dad's side, I don't know of anybody on my dad's side. I'm completely unfamiliar with anybody there that did.
Mhm.
So that's probably.
It's quite a few, though.
And Barb's side of the family, her dad and her uncle and her 2 brothers were both Vietnam, and so yeah, quite a. It's the military was part of,
Right. Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty wild. And when I first met you, us kids, none of us had any idea
Yeah,
that you had served.
yeah. Well, I never really.
Why would we know?
Yeah, I was never. I wasn't very active in the Legion. I got a little more active last couple of years. I marched in the homecoming parades that way and stuff or
Yep.
whatever. But I did do a few funerals and stuff too. But but other than that, I didn't do much as far as the Legion was concerned.
Right. So maybe at this point in your life, you got a little time for hobbies. Do you have any?
Oh yeah,
What do you got?
I'm an avid golfer.
Yep.
I'm an avid golfer, and I'm really not very good, but I play a lot during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch a lot of sports on TV, and I also pretty active in our church out in Brandon. Now I was very active in our church down in Elk Point. I was congregational president a couple times, and I was always on the things and so on. But in Brandon now, I'm mentoring a group of 7th graders in confirmation classes and stuff, and I lecture 2-3 times a month.
Yep.
And so, and
Got that strong voice.
yeah, I know that's what everybody's happy is that we can always hear you when you when you read.
We could hear you on the mat.
Yeah.
When we were wrestling stuff.
Yeah, I've always had that. There's somebody say you have a big mouth, but yeah, and it's really funny when I think back. My dad was not happy with me when I told him I was going to get an early out of the Army and go back to school. I said, I'm going to be a teacher. And he said, why?
Really?
Yeah. And I kind of felt bad, but he says, you're never going to make any money doing that. I said, I know, but I just can't sit at a drawing board. He wanted me to stay in drafting and stuff. And he was kind of disappointed, but he he was fine with it. I mean,
Yeah.
he never put me down any more than what he said that one time. Why?
Right. Well,
And I was
parents,
never sorry for making the choice that I made.
absolutely. You got to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Not too many can say they do what they love to do,
Yeah.
but a lot of them do. And there's just something about that. As you know, life's not about money, but the goal that I had was just to have a good enough job to make halfway decent wage, be able to easily pay all your bills, put a little something away from retirement, and maybe travel a little bit here and there. But I swore off the military until I was 22 years old. So there's where I got my travel, most of it, My wife and I, we do some traveling and stuff. But yeah, I didn't feel the need to be rich or really well off or anything. And teaching, that's a noble task.
I'm probably better off now, money-wise, than I was when I taught.
Right.
Because our kids are grown and stuff, and the state retirement in South Dakota is a very, very good retirement system. Yep. I hated putting that 5% in every month, but I'm sure glad they took it out automatically and to do it because it's helped a lot.
Yeah, I've always heard the South Dakota state retirement system is pretty good.
Yeah.
You might be paid a little less on the average as far as being a teacher, but it works out good at retirement time.
They've had good people that have run it and stuff, and that's made a big thing. They're not wild with their stock buying and stuff like that. They stay pretty conservative and stuff, and especially even during the times when the stock market wasn't very good, we always got our 3% every year.
Yep.
And so.
Especially when you're in it for the long haul.
Yep.
That, you can have these waves and spikes and valleys, but that levels off a ways above zero if you're in there for the long haul.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was never sorry that I became a teacher, and I really enjoyed what I did, and I felt good about what I did. I always felt that I treated people fairly. I tried to anyway, and I know sometimes people didn't. Well, that's not fair. Well, that's the only solution I got for you right now. And that's the way I want things to be. So.
Well, you were very well respected. I mean, as far as I knew, everybody I heard talking about you, they really liked you as a teacher.
Thank you.
And and I avoided your class. I was not a chemistry guy. I never took chemistry. I don't remember if I had maybe one biology class. I think I had you for one of those.
Yeah, general, it's probably,
Yep, general biology, and that was it. But yeah, a lot of my friends were doing the chemistry stuff, and there's just something about it. I was just steered clear.
I know. When I was in high school, I took chemistry, but I didn't learn a thing. I took physics, and I learned even less there.
Yeah.
So
I'll get a little bit crude here, not terribly crude, but my buddies Doug Taylor, Tim Dennis, and Steve Morrow, mostly Doug and Steve, they would show me the periodic table. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Well, sodium is Na. So the closest I got to using chemistry was when we were walking down the mall in Sioux City, and some gals would walk by over here, and the guys would look and they'd say, "Sodium." That's the extent of my chemistry. Is that right there?
Yeah, like I said, I learned a lot of chemistry when I had to teach it. And it got to be, biology was my first love, but chemistry got to be real close to biology because biology everybody had to take.
Yep.
In chemistry, they didn't. And so I tended to get a lot of the better students that really needed it to go on with what their plans were and stuff. And so
and I was huge on electronics at the time with my brother and learning how to wire things and all that. So my excuse was, well, I don't need chemistry for that. I know what I'm going into, a lot needed math and things of that nature.
Well, when I was teaching, I always felt respected. I never really felt disrespected by anybody. So that's because that goes to the school and things too, because we had good students down that point. And Esteline I did too. They were good kids up there.
You bet. So we got reacquainted a year and a half ago, 2 years
Yes,
ago, maybe something
when
like
we
that.
started.
Why don't you tell that story on how that group got started and has grown since?
Okay. Glenn Nelson, who we talked about, was the wrestling coach down at Elk Point, was living after he retired from teaching and so on, was living here in Sioux Falls. And Roger Schaefer, who was the basketball coach back then, they kind of got together and started having coffee once in a while. We always went to McDonald's to have coffee. Well, we moved back from Elk Point up to Brandon in, I think it's been like we're going on 8 years right now. So they found out I was back up there, and they gave me a call and said, "Hey, you want to come to coffee? Because we've got a few guys here that come." And Alan Nichols and
Chuck Parsons, Craig
and Craig Madsen. They were all former students from down there, and they were kind of getting together and stuff.
And Malloy?
Yes, Glenn
Malloy.
Yep. And see, I never had those kids in school.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there in Elk Point when they were students.
Right.
And I don't think Glenn was either.
Yeah,
I don't think he was
most
there.
of those guys are like 10 years older than I am.
Yeah. So we started getting together once a month, second Wednesday of every month, and we meet at McDonald's and have coffee for an hour. We didn't stretch it out any further than that, and it's been really, really nice. And now Glenn has moved to the nursing home, and he can't get out so easy anymore. So now we've started going to the nursing home, and sometimes some other people from Elk Point show up, and we had a birthday party for him. We had 20-some people there at the birthday party.
Yeah, I wish we could name them
so,
all, but we'd miss somebody.
Yeah, I know it. And some of those guys I don't know, but weren't my students, but everybody makes everybody happy, and
that was
it's a
awesome.
good time.
Because I remember year before last, Mr. Nelson. Here we go, Mr.
Yeah,
Nelson.
I know.
It's hard to call him Glenn.
I understand that.
And had his 96th birthday.
Yep.
So I started coming prior to that, and I remember you guys got cake and cards and all that stuff, and I just remember Mr. Schaefer starting to chant 4 more years,
4
and all
more
that.
years, yep.
And then we just read, so a year goes by real quick, and then we're at the nursing home, which is so much easier. Craig, Mr. Nelson's son, didn't have to get him out. But so now he's 97. So I started a little chant off the side, but I didn't take one off. I just stayed with 4 more years, And I looked at Mr. Nelson, he's smiling. He says, "We're not limiting you to anything," So, but he was just beaming during that.
Well, I understand your problem with calling somebody, you're used to calling somebody Mr. and so on, because my biology teacher from high school and coach and so on goes to my church.
Oh, really?
And he's 100.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in July, he'll be 101. And he's just moved out of his house now, and he's out at Bethany Meadows, which is, but he's in, not in the nursing home, but in
assisted living.
Assisted living, kind of, yeah. And he's still, and he's still pretty sharp and so on. And I really have a hard time calling him Jack. And it's always Mr. Lauer.
Mr. Vanderlinde, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Schaefer. And Mr. Schaefer left. He was our history teacher, but he left in 79.
Yes.
And that's right when I was becoming like a freshman. So I didn't get to have any classes with him, but I just loved the presence that he had when we would all go to the basketball games, always in a jacket, and just the presence of walking down the court there and coaching these young men and stuff. It was, and I never had any idea that I'd ever see him again. And it's been really cool.
It's kind of different hanging around with old people, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Let's look at your hair compared to mine here and stuff. Yeah. It.
Well, how old are you now?
I'll be 62 in June.
Okay.
Yep. So, The one thing I will say is that I think it might have been the birthday party. Mr. Schaefer wrote that book, that like
Yep.
memoir you'd call it, or whatever. And he had a couple copies there and was offering them out. And I took one of those and I read that. And I'll tell you, Mr. Schaefer, that was pretty dang cool. The different stages of his life from early on, and getting into the teaching and the sports and the basketball. He had stats from every year that he had in
Yep.
there. And that was still very interesting for me to read because he tied it all in together. But then I remembered his wife, Mrs. Schaefer, I had Mrs. LaFurrier in 6th grade, and Mrs. Schaefer was the next room over.
Yep.
So I had a little bit of time with her. And just such a sad deal that she passed away. And
I taught with her sister in Esteline.
did you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah,
that was
quality
kinda-
people, man. But it was, I learned so much more about him and his life, and it was kind of interesting because when the crowd was leaving one time at, I think it was leaving, not showing up, but it was just me and him there for a little bit. I think we were waiting for people to show up, and we're like, yeah, I don't know much about you, and you don't know much about
Yep.
me, and all that. So I know a lot more about you now, but that was a fantastic book, and all the way up to later days, and I really enjoyed that. I did contact Angie Rosenbaum, was Angie Kavanaugh. She has a lot to do with, I think, the museum in Elk Point. And
Okay.
I haven't heard back from her yet, but I asked if there's a copy of that book in the Elk Point Museum. Because if it's not, that's where that book is going.
Yeah.
There. But if they do have a copy, then I'm just going to find some other Elk Point people that would like to read that. Because
Right.
I was pretty impressed. It
Yep.
was really cool learning that.
Yeah.
You ought to write one.
I could write a driver's ed book.
Well, that's something he does. He's teaching driving for decades and decades.
Yeah. In fact, he gave up driver's ed when I came.
Oh, was that?
Yep.
Okay.
Because I started in the fall of '78, and so then the next year he.
Yep, left in 79. Tremendous basketball coaching career. Yankton and then Marshall, Minnesota.
Yep.
Huge successes.
Yep.
Yep, pretty cool. So I really enjoy that group getting together, no matter how big or how small.
Well, yeah. Like I said, I didn't know Alan and or Chuck, and I see Chuck now. Maybe every other day in Brandon someplace,
Yep.
or whatever.
And both of those are mentioned in that book too.
Yeah.
Some of their accolades and some sports heroics.
Right.
Was pretty cool.
Yep.
And I didn't know Chuck before, but I was neighbors with Al's grandma,
Oh, okay.
right next door neighbor, Rena Nichols.
Okay.
So it's been nice
that's
getting
right.
acquainted.
She was down over there. Yeah.
Getting reacquainted with. We're on the other side of the tracks,
Yep, that's right.
right across from Ollie's Drive-In.
Yep.
That was a plus.
It's not Ollie's anymore.
Yeah, I don't remember if they changed the name.
Yeah,
of it
they did. And I
Or
can't.
Ollie's 2.0.
Yeah,
or
maybe
something
that's
like
what
that.
it is. Something that, yeah. We don't get to Elk Point near as much as what we used to because my daughter and her husband used to live in Elk Point, but now they live on an acreage out by Spink. And so we just go down to Spink, and
That's
we
as
went
far as you go.
we were babysitting our grandkids down there last week because they were at the state dart tournament. And so we drove into Elk Point and looked around and stuff, still Elk Point.
Yep. Yep. It changed when Dakota Dunes went in after I graduated. That's when the biggest changes came around with
Yep.
housing and things of that nature.
Well,
But
Gateway, I think, had a lot to do with
yes. Yep.
Yep.
That's right. Other than that, not a lot of changes.
that. Yeah, we went to Elk Point in '78, and we left. I was just trying to remember when we left. It was my 50th wedding anniversary. I can't remember what year it was.
Did you have an acreage south of town for a while? Did you live out in the country?
We lived
somewhere?
out in the country on a house that Roland Rosenbaum
Okay.
owned.
Yep.
And let's see, then it was right across the road from Bruce Rubida,
Mm.
his folks' place.
Okay.
And And then we moved into town. Effie Bird had a house underneath the water tower, and we lived there for a while. And then we moved over onto Clay, across the street from who lived in that place. Can't remember now. There's a lot of people lived in it since. And
Another thing we've talked about is how many names all you teachers have learned through the years. And when you're like, trying to think of somebody's name, I'm like, hey, take the pressure off yourself. Like hundreds of thousands of people.
I know. I was thinking about that not too long ago, because when I was doing the mobile science lab around town, we had teachers come in, on every summer. So I had a whole new batch of teachers' names to learn, and I had to remember them for the year so that I could call them up and arrange to get things done and then go there. And I think we put, what did you say? We put 100 and some teachers through our workshops in the 6 years that we did it. So
yeah, so don't feel bad if you can't remember a name.
I have trouble. What I have more trouble for, and I always Rita Amon, I can't believe how she remembers what kids were in which class and so on. And she's amazing.
Yep. Math teacher for 50 years. I think her first 2 or so weren't at Elk Point.
Right,
maybe?
Right. So she came to Elk Point in 77. She was there the year before I came.
She's got that data mind.
I think so.
I think it just, amazing lady. Super sweet, too.
Yep. Great teacher.
Mm-hmm. Hadn't changed in years and years and years. Looks or anything.
Nope,
Personality,
that's right.
Just a great lady. Yeah. So through your life, all the lows, all the highs, what is at least maybe one of the things that you learned the most out of that? 1 or 2 or whatever you want to.
I learned how important it was to talk to people about different things and so on. I was always fairly quiet and some things that, unless I was being a smart aleck in school, I was sometimes the class clown. My wife will tell you that, because she was in class. In high school, I was always trying to get her in trouble. We never went together. In fact, we didn't care for each other that much when we were in high school.
Really? Yeah, we didn't go into that part of the story.
No.
So got together later.
Stay away from that. So, yeah. High points, there's been so many and stuff, and a lot of low points. Probably the lowest point that's happened most recent is losing my grandson.
Losing your
stuff.
grandson, right?
My mom passed away in 2022, and she had been in hospice for a while and stuff, and it was really a blessing when she finally she didn't want to give up, and finally it was one of those speeches I had to have with her a little bit, and I said she was no longer really coherent, or whatever, and tell her that you can let it go, Mom.
Right.
So
I like your answer though. Through all the highs and the lows, just talk to people.
yeah, and I know I don't do enough of that sometimes yet. That there's times I know I should go say something to somebody, good or bad, and I don't. I choose not to, and I'm afraid for myself to maybe get myself injured, some way that they may say something back that would hurt me or whatever, and so I protect myself that way sometimes. But
you speak the truth with love, kind of deal. If you have to have tough conversations and things, that's what I would imagine. With knowing you the way I do.
I like, even though I don't like to talk to them sometimes, I do like people.
You've been immersed in people your whole career and stuff, so I could see where a little solitude could be craved.
I was really worried when we moved back to Brandon from Elk Point, because I had a group of guys that I really, really enjoyed golfing with and stuff, Roger Skinner and some of those guys, and we moved back. We moved to Brandon. I'm gonna miss golfing with those guys. I'll just go down every once in a while. I started golfing every day in Brandon, and I golfed about 2 or 3 days, and this is boring by myself.
Right.
So I went into the pro, and I said, "Say, do you have a group of older gentlemen here that are kind of coordinated and with each other and stuff?" And he said, "Yeah, we got a group called the Old Coots." And I said, "Could you introduce me to them or whatever?" And he gave me the guys that's in charge of it, gave me his phone number and stuff, and when they usually meet and stuff. And I went and talked to him, and they invited me right into the group, and that it's a great group of people. A lot of people from Arrows.
Mm-hmm.
They're retired from Arrows and
Right.
stuff, and it's a great group of people, and we have a lot of fun together. And
That's cool. You weren't shy about asking.
I know I sometimes I am shy about doing those kind of things, but I said I'm not enjoying myself like I think I should be enjoying myself. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah, I've always felt the same way when I owned a boat. You know, you could go out on a lake by yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
Or horseback ride, and I can go over to Newton Hills over here by myself.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, thanks for the ride, Joe. You know, no, you got to have people with you. Got to be around at least a couple.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I ran into a guy at the golf course one day, and he invited me to golf with him and stuff, you know. And he was younger than me, and we got talking a little bit and stuff, and found out that his brother was my brother's best friend when they were in high school. So
Isn't that amazing?
you know, so I got another friend out there that he shows up every day. He owns a concrete business in town, and he kind of gets the jobs and kind of gets things set up and pour the cement, and then he goes golfing and leaves his crew to take care of the
There
cement
you
the
go.
rest of the day. So.
Well, just a couple weeks ago in the hog house here, we had wild game feed, and we've been doing it for like 30 years. There's some years that we've skipped, but not recently. But that's what, well, it started more so with air guard people. And then after so many years, the novelty wears off, and then it started to taper off with those folks. But then had other groups of friends that I had started inviting. So now there's some of those people where this is the only place they see each other once a year. But the thing that happens the most that I like is, and I get to witness a lot of it, is exactly what you said. These two people are standing over here, you know, one's here and then one's here, and then they kind of gravitate and they start talking.
Yeah.
And they get that. It happened with two different people this last 2 weeks ago.
Well, one thing about South Dakota is everybody knows everybody or knows somebody
Yep.
that does know somebody else that you know, and you're always running into things all the time that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice about not having that many people in the state.
Yeah, I like the solitude as well if you need it. And that's why I like living out on the acreage here. I go to town quite a bit, a couple little towns and Sioux Falls, but when I feel the need or I have errands to run. And other than that, I'm ready to get south out of Sioux Falls pretty quick once I get my list done and stuff.
Yeah, I don't like shopping very much and stuff.
I'm a very efficient shopper.
I went into Costco one day right around Christmas time, and I just about hyperventilated in there. It was so jam packed full of people that I'm never doing this again.
I was in there the other day when we had the snow warnings. Perfect time to go to Costco because some people don't want to be out on the roads.
Yep.
And I only have half a dozen things at most.
Yep.
I don't push the cart around. So through the talking here, and I told you when we were sitting over here before we started that it's okay to jump around. Do you have any other memories or anything with teaching, coaching, military that you thought about talking about here that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, Barb and I have done some traveling a little bit too. My mom, before she passed away, she gave each of us kids a check for $10,000, and she said, "What I want you to do with that is I want you to do something travel-wise or whatever, and then tell me about it."
Perfect.
And so my brother and his wife, they went to Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii except I stopped there on the way Bangkok, but
Sure.
so I didn't see much. But they went there, and I can't remember what my sister did. Barb and I did an Alaskan cruise, and that was just awesome. And she didn't like boats and stuff, and so I was a little worried that she wouldn't enjoy things. But she was worried she was going to get sick on the boat or whatever, And so she talked to her cousin about it, and he says, "Tell your doctor to prescribe you some Xanax." And he says it'll take care of you. Perfect.
Yep.
She did that, and we even rode in the elevator that's on the outside of the cruise ship and stuff, right over the water. And she never would have done that before. And she was fine. It was a great vacation. I'd love to do it again, only increase the time and go on the land part through Denali's and stuff. And we didn't do that. We just did the water part, the inside passage.
Yeah, because Denali's a ways up there.
Yeah. We stopped in Juneau and Ketchikan and Sitka and Vancouver, but it was a great time. And it was just Barb and I, and it was I don't know if you know the Gaithers and Southern Gospel stuff,
Yep.
and it wasn't the Gaithers, but there were several groups from the Gaithers that were on there, and so we had a concert every night with a different group or whatever. We had a devotional thing in the morning every day, and then we stopped at places, and
that's cool.
And that was great. And then we did another trip with my brother and sister-in-law and my sister. We went out to the East Coast for 2 weeks, and we started out and stayed in Vermont, and then we rented a car, of course. We flew out there in Philadelphia. We landed and drove up there. And then we went around and went to Boston and all those places like that. We drive
rich in history.
Yeah, and up through Vermont and up Maine, up the coast, and had lobster at a little dive right out on the ocean and stuff. It was great, great food. And then we went over to we stayed in New Hampshire, and then we went over to Vermont to the coffee, Green Mountain Coffee place. They have a place in the Green Mountains, and you could start smelling that coffee roasting. We were 5 or 6 miles away, and we knew we were getting close because you could just smell that coffee roasting in the air. And then we drove down to Virginia, and we stayed in Virginia, and went to D.C. and all that kind of stuff and everything. And so we spent 2 weeks out there and came back, and that was a great vacation. We went to Gettysburg, Antietam, all those battlefields and stuff. And I'd been to Gettysburg before when I was stationed out there at Fort Belvoir and stuff. And so I'd been to D.C. a couple of times, and then with the honor, it made it even better for me.
Oh, yeah.
When I got to show Chase everything, that I'd seen before and everything on the honor flight. So that was really great. So, and we've gone to, we're Kansas State fans for football, and we've been to 4 or 5 of their bowl games and stuff and everything. And
all on 10 grand.
Yep. No. Yep. We manage our money wisely. But what we did is when we got back, we took all of our pictures and we put them into a book and stuff and gave to my mom that book and stuff. And then we also bought her a digital picture frame.
Oh, yeah.
And we plugged in that. And we've added, when we went to the East Coast and stuff, we've added that to it. And when we went to bowl games and stuff, and added all those into it. So that was, she said, I'm really, really glad I did that.
Yes. Yeah.
Because she said, I can't travel anymore. And I got to see you guys enjoy yourselves with some of that money.
That's really cool.
So we were really, really pleased with that.
Anything else come to mind?
Not
As soon as we sit over there.
yeah. No, I think I've covered a lot of stuff. Pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a boring person, really. But
See, that's what everybody says, that, you know, I invite people to do this, and people are obviously hesitant. I probably would have been too. But I always just tell them, let me be the judge of
right.
whatever they say to me about
Right.
reasons to not do it. But yeah, it was like a couple months ago, beginning of the winter or something, you and I talked about it. And we were both going to be busy for quite a while.
Right.
So really, this was our first opportunity, and we got together on our first opportunity. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I didn't have anything going on. I knew I had to do it before summer came.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Or we'd have to put lavalier mics on.
Yeah, I know.
And yeah, the only time I've played one serious game of golf, sliced terrible, hit a bird right in the head. Oh my gosh, couldn't believe it. It was bouncing and going toward this bird and whack.
Yep.
Luckily, it didn't kill it or anything. It just flopped around for a little while.
Oh, I've got a few stories
play.
on hitting the ball and hitting it off the heel of the club and going right beside you and different directions and so on. It's a thing about golf. It's extremely frustrating game, but then sometimes you get rewards and then you're ready to go back the next day.
Just enough, just like a gambler.
Yeah, it's different. I never really played golf until I retired.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, you never had time.
Well, yeah, because of the driver's ed and everything. You know, I didn't. If you bought a membership at the golf course, I wouldn't get out there hardly at all, and you know, and so I never really played that much. But when I retired, then I started going out with Skinner and those guys and playing, and next thing you know, I'm going every day and stuff. You know, and I got bit hard.
Well, that's good. That's good, because you got to have stuff to do.
Yep.
Recreational wise and socially.
Yeah. Wintertime is not real good because I don't like to play cards or games and stuff very well. My wife loves to play cards and games and stuff.
We got a similar situation. Her family's real big, but I was always the guy watching all the, 10, 12 grandkids that were running around.
Yep.
So I had that as an out while they played pinochle. They still tease me to this day.
Yeah.
About that.
And I don't know. It just like I used to play when I was when I went to vocational school. We played a lot of whist up there and stuff, and in fact we played a couple old all-nighters and stuff, not the cards, but just don't enjoy playing anymore. So
yep. Well, really, winter goes plenty fast. You said you like watching sports. So,
yep.
if you watch a bunch of that through the winter,
yep,
it goes pretty quick. It really does.
I never really get into basketball too much, but
yeah,
the only time I watch basketball is when March Madness here starts now, and then I'll start watching some more. I like watching hockey, but I never watch it during the regular season. When Stanley Cup comes around, then I'm watching.
Yep. There's enough big season events that come up.
Oh, yeah.
You can save it for that.
Yep. And with all the channels that you can get, I stream everything now. I use YouTube TV, but that's something new to learn.
No NASCAR left turns.
No, don't like left turns. I have a sister and her husband that was going to be their thing when they got retired and everything, and travel around and go to NASCAR stuff, and then he passed away. So
Bummer.
Before they even got a chance to get going very good with it. So
yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
You definitely never know. So
you never know.
Don't
That's
wait
why
till retirement.
I know
to do everything.
That's right.
Wow. Well, we talked about family, and I like recording people's stories. And like I said before, if somebody's sitting in that chair and they don't want it on YouTube, I'll give you digital copy because it's for your family and your friends. But so there's a possibility that some great grandkids, people that you won't meet, could have 15 of them sitting underneath that center camera there. What would you like to say to them?
I hope that you have the same type of life that I was able to have. Enjoy yourself. and be kind to everyone.
Good advice. Good advice. All right. Well, I'm going to say thank you for your service. And
Thank you.
Welcome home.
Thank you for remembering.
You bet. You bet. All right. Last chance.
I think I'm about talked out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I
You bet.
greatly appreciate it.
I enjoyed this very much, and I'm thankful that you asked me to do it, and I'm thankful that I got it done.
You bet. I'll get it edited up, and then I'll be done, and
Sounds
we'll get
good.
her posted.
Sounds good.
So, all right. Thank you very much.
You bet.
And thanks for watching. Excellent. Yeah, that was fun. How's your butt doing?
Not good.
I know.
You noticed I was starting to squirm a little bit toward the end there.
Yeah, pretty common.